Rider Impala of the drift boat world.
It's spooky going through the wave train on the South Fork in the canyon. I was like, people really doing this? And the guy I bought it from was like, oh, hell yeah.
It'd be fine. What could go wrong?
Yeah, I'm going to get that door real quick.
Well, dude, if you floated, like even from Dam to Spring Creek at Winter Flows.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, that wave train that you can usually kind of just skirt right along, like by Lodge Palisades.
Oh, the first bend
You're
below Pine
shooting
Tree.
down it, and it's like water's coming in. You're like, holy crap.
It is.
Can you hear us? Are we live?
Are we live? I'm alive.
Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another Taiwan on Tuesday. Hopefully we have some volume tonight. Again, sorry about last week. I think it's sounding much better. So we're going to have a fun show. We got Mike here. John's going to be tying up a Stonefly Dry Fly. And then Max is over here. He's the head brewmaster. What do you call yourself?
I'm technically the brewmaster.
The brewmaster.
Just make the beer.
Yeah. Over at our neighbor Roadhouse Brewery. Yeah. So we are drinking some yummy beers and their new seltzers. He's also an avid fly fisherman, so lots of fun things to talk about. So leave some comments, ask some questions, and we'll answer anything we can. All right, take it away, guys.
Alrighty.
What are we doing, John?
What are we doing? Well, first off, Mike, I have to give a shout out to my dad. I know he's watching. It's his birthday today, so happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, Johnstown.
Oh, yeah. So,
I said happy birthday, Johnstown.
There you go. Yeah, so today, kind of our topic that I'd like to talk a little bit about briefly. You know, there's a lot of stuff we try to talk about. But big bugs, whether that be stoneflies, hoppers, anything just kind of big you can think of for the summertime is kind of what we're talking about. And then, Claire, if you just want to zoom in real quick, I'm just going to show.
Is this our final product?
Yeah, this is hopefully what it's going to look like at the end of this deal here. But this is just a stonefly variation of a Ken Burke holder pattern, just with some twists on stuff I do. But it would be a good one that, again, you can see even tying it in different color variations for golden stones. Purple is obviously just kind of a general attractor color. But you go bigger hooks for salmon flies, smaller for yellow sallies, so on and so forth. So you can make this pattern what you want, change some stuff up here as well. But I think I'm going to let you talk a little bit here, Max, about Roadhouse while I'm kind of just getting stuff started here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, super excited to be here. I'm Max. I'm the brewmaster at Roadhouse Brewing Company. 2 doors, 3 doors, couple of doors down is our pub and eatery. It's our restaurant with our experimental brew house in it, which is really exciting. Some really unique one-off beers that we produce in there, and some other beers and projects like Seltzy and more of our beer-focused things. We trial through there a really fantastic menu in there as well, very beer and food focused. So if you're in Jackson anytime, stop on by. We'd love to see you. Have a great fresh beer and a really killer meal. And then, of course, we have our production facility down a little south by the Smith's grocery store, kind of back behind it, where we produce all these wonderful canned offerings that we distribute throughout the Intermountain West. So,
what are you sipping on tonight?
I am sipping on Pono Life, which is our collaboration we do with Maui Brewing Company. Really fun. We have a great relationship with the team at Maui. They live a very similar lifestyle that we do and make some really fantastic beer. So we've been brewing with them for 2 years now. It's a passion fruit hazy IPA using a lot of cool mainland hops from Idaho and some really fresh passion fruit. So I'm really pumped to be drinking Pono Life. Really tasty.
Mike, what are you sipping on?
Oh, I just poured myself Wilson IPA, which that's a classic, wouldn't we say? I mean, that's foundational beer for the brewery.
Big time. It does. It's our #1 beer. We do most of our brewing and sales is Wilson. A lot of people have been following Roadhouse now for almost 10 years. Back when it was the Q and Wilson would know it as Rhombus, that's a real throwback. If you've really been hanging out, Rhombus is it. We even call it out on the side of the can. Same beer. We had to change the name. Small dispute with another craft brewery, but in the craft beer industry, we're all great friends and we respect each other. So we went with Wilson, which was also very fitting because the original brewery started in Wilson. And if you've got even deeper knowledge of Roadhouse, it's a great fish track. Not Trout fish.
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 With a P. And an H.
Yes, precisely. So, but it's great to be here, and love coming in the shop as well. And I certainly make an excuse to go brew at the square and pick up some materials for fly tying. And
There you go.
it's great to be here.
All right. So what I've just done here so far, this is just diving more into different bugs and stonefly specifically. Not that it's going to make or break this pattern if you don't have everything, although all these materials can either be substituted or you can find here in the shop, which is always good. So if you're a local, stop in, we can kind of get you squared away for this pattern. All I did was I added a medium-sized monofilament eye on there, just to give it, a more realistic appearance. Not that a fish is going to, refuse to fly if it doesn't have eyeballs on it. And I also added some antennas. Again, just my personal aesthetics. I like it. Just something that I think isn't necessarily going to hurt the fly. So that's why I added in. And all I use is 6-pound Maxima Chameleon to make the antennas. And I'm also going to be adding an egg sac like the female stoneflies will have when they deposit their eggs. And then I'm going to add another set of tails as well. Again, using that 6-pound Maxima Chameleon. We've been doing some fishing, Mike. Why don't we do a quick little fishing report?
Yeah.
While we're kind of getting some stuff.
I think probably all of us have been doing
Yeah.
some fishing, but I think the big news to report for those folks around the Jackson Hole area is that finally it seems like spring fishing might come. I know at least when I've been on here, we've been saying, stuff's kind of slow to get going. And it has been. But we got some warm temperatures getting to the 40s, and I think we hit 54 in Jackson last week. And it got the fishing going. So
Yeah.
I think now if you're heading out to the river, you can confidently, on most days, unless it's been really cold the night before, you should be able to go out there with the intention of looking for rising fish. And I don't know about you guys, but when I go out fishing, that's like goal number one is go find some rising fish. But
Yeah, absolutely.
it's turned the corner. So
Yeah.
it's midges. It's still a small bug game. Lots
Yeah.
of midges out. A few Capnia stoneflies you guys have been seeing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So they're not much bigger, but those little black stoneflies are now present and abundant. And fish are looking up. They're moving out of that extremely slow water, and they're actually getting into a little bit faster water and actively feeding on the surface. So that's the big development around here. I mean, what have you guys been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same thing. I was out today with Ken and Wilson, one of the other employees here. Conditions maybe weren't ideal. It was nice overcast conditions. When that wind would die down, it was pretty warm out, and that's when we'd see a lot of the consistent rising, continue to happen. But afterwards, then that wind picked up, stuff really kind of slowed down. But that's to be expected, especially with the slow areas that we're typically fishing this time of year. Stuff's getting blown around, bugs are getting blown off the water. Not much for those fish to really come up and eat necessarily, but if you work hard enough, maybe go subsurface a little bit, you can still find some fish. Not that
Yeah.
I had much success with a nymph rig today, but I did fish a dry dropper, and that landed me a couple fish. So just small midge patterns. Again, you could probably do some small stonefly patterns as well this time of year, seeing that might even see some squallows coming off here whenever we can, and those Capnia stoneflies as well. And that's a good thing that you brought up too, because that's one thing I don't think a lot of people maybe take into consideration is those Capnias, because you may be seeing fish rising, throwing everything
bugs.
or the whole kitchen sink at
No
you,
bugs.
or no bugs, and they're refusing midge patterns, whatever it may be. Well, and Howard may have referenced this at one point. Capnia stoneflies aren't like what we're tying here, where they crawl out on rocks and hatch. These guys hatch in the water down below and then come up. So that's when you kind of seeing stuff maybe just subsurface, or like you said, no bugs really at all. I wouldn't hesitate to throw a Capnia out there, and they're big 16, probably more along an 18. They're pretty little, but it's definitely worth having in your box, I think.
Definitely.
But what have you been seeing here, Max?
I've been fishing over on the Idaho side, which has been great. A lot of nymph game, but I'm pretty pumped. I think maybe an improvement or change we've seen last week is the boat ramps have been plowed.
Mhm.
Is that in the last week? So I'm
Yeah.
pumped. I'm gonna go for a float on Saturday,
Nice.
and I'm just craving being in a drift boat right now.
I'm gonna wait another month or two, but
Frickin'
I'm glad everyone's out there.
come on. You got the raft. You can put in wherever you want.
That is true. So we've made some steps forward here.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So what I've done again, kind of, is I just put it's a small chunk of 2mm craft foam. I doubled it over in the back and tied it off again to make that little egg sac. Again, not that that's really important. It's just a little extra to that pattern that makes me more confident in fishing it. And then again, I added some more of that 6-pound Maxima Chameleon to add some of the tails. And I'm just going to cut those. I cut the tails shorter than the antennas. Again, anatomically correct. These bugs, their antennas are longer than their tails. Not that the fish really care, and not that you have to have them on there, because there's stuff like chubby Chernobyls that don't have stuff like that catch fish. So, just a little bit of a kind of play on this pattern that I personally like. Again, you could totally leave it out, and it doesn't really matter. You could fish it just like I said with it as it is, without those antennas. I'm sure you'll still catch fish.
There's ghosts.
Place is haunted.
What hook are you tying this on?
So yeah, that's a good point. I didn't mention that. So the hook I have here, it's a Firehole 718 BL, which is their barbless hook. That's all Firehole makes is barbless hooks. I try and use them as much as I can, just for the fish's sake. If I get them stuck in myself, a lot easier to remove. Probably does a lot less damage to the fish as well. And the reason I really decided to kind of settle on this hook is it holds really well for a barbless hook. And what I mean by that is, if you lose tension on your line, which you still have a fish on, I find that they can't necessarily spit it quite as easily, which I think is definitely important, especially come summertime when I may be guiding, doing stuff like that, especially with inexperienced people, but myself included. I just like the hook. I think it sets really good. Again, it holds. I think that's probably due to the fact it's got a really upturned hook point. Big wide gap too, which is always nice, so I know there's enough room there to hook the fish.
And I might just interject for folks who are watching from maybe not this area.
Yeah.
This might be completely foreign to you, but we do have places where barbless hooks are required. Yellowstone National Park, first and foremost. And even where it's not required, many of the places you will fish are catch and release fisheries, and that is going to help you safely and quickly release that fish so that it can swim on, and then someone else can catch it.
Yeah, exactly. But a good substitute that we have here in the shop would be a Tiemco 200. It's a little bit longer shank, a little bit smaller gap, but that hook wouldn't be too bad, especially in a little bit bigger sizes. I find the smaller sizes, sometimes the fish can spit them pretty good. And I think that has to do with the just that shank length and the hook gaps kind of give them the leverage to spit it. But so the next step I did is I just wrapped in a hackle, and it's kind of funny looking, but I tie it almost off at a 90-degree angle from the hook shank. The reason I do that is so when I start my first wrap, it's just oriented properly. Because what I'm actually going to do is this going to be a body hackle. I'm going to trim all the actual hackle tips off. Just give it a little bit more flotation, but at the same time it holds air bubbles. And if you really look at it, sometimes when stoneflies are on the surface, their bodies do hold air pockets. On smaller flies, I think it might be a big deal, like when you have caddis and mayflies emerging, stuff like that, that the air pocket matters. But on here, it just gives you more confidence. And the higher it floats, I'm not going to complain either. So this is going to be kind of a little different trick that I do as well. Most people would actually tie in maybe a piece of monofilament, wire, or some type of ribbing material to wrap their body, put the hackle on, wrap the hackle backwards, and then take again a ribbing through it. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to actually dub my body backwards and finish at this egg sac here. wrap my hackle, and I'm just going to take my thread through that hackle. Essentially doing the same thing. I'm just going to use my thread. Sometimes I'm just not a big fan of using a wire rib or whatever it may be, just for the simple fact of this just saves me a step of having to tie in one less material. And what I'm using for the body, again, it's a purple UV ice dub. Nothing too crazy there. Again, you can change the dubbing color to whatever you want to make it, again, a yellow Sally, golden stonefly, a salmon fly. You know, we do get mutant stoneflies here, or September stones, which tend to be a little different in coloration, but that's just another option for you.
I think we should unpack that a little bit.
So actually talk about big bugs.
Okay. It might be good. I mean, we're not going to go out and throw this bug tomorrow. Well, maybe we will. I don't know.
They're cutthroat, right? They're stupid as Howard would say.
Yeah.
Don't even.
Throw a couple legs on it.
We're not having that
I'll throw
conversation.
it on Saturday.
Let's go out to Flat Creek and talk about how dumb the fish are.
No, exactly.
So how good are you at multitasking? Can you dub that body while we talk?
I think so. I mean, we've been talking this whole time.
Perfect.
Now I'm stuck, Mike. Darn it.
What the heck is a stonefly?
A stonefly.
Do you want to tell us? Do you want to tell us? You want me?
I mean, you're the fisheries biologist,
stop it.
so you're like the smart guy here. You got you have a big college degree. I just have an associate's degree. You got a big master.
Now you're just making me feel bad. Well, okay, so stoneflies are aquatic insects, and if you're not a fly fisherman, I know we have people who watch this who just get so angry and send in comments about how we're talking about all this jargon. It happens sometimes.
You do say a lot of big terms.
Stoneflies are aquatic insects. We also have bugs that live on land. We call those terrestrial insects. Those are like your ants and beetles that get in your house and drive you crazy. But stoneflies are a part of an order of insects under Plecoptera. And with mayflies and caddisflies, Plecoptera. Plecoptera. Mayflies, stoneflies, and caddisflies for anglers are extremely important bugs, but for aquatic ecosystems, they're widespread and really important food sources for other vertebrates that depend on them.
Yep.
Stoneflies get our attention as anglers primarily because they're big. So
Yeah.
bugs, for the most part, these big bugs we're talking about tonight, you're going to start to see over on the Idaho side maybe as early as May. And their hatches are going to last, if you consider our late summer stoneflies, through September. These bugs are big, anywhere from as big as size 2 to 4 in some places with our giant stoneflies, the salmon fly. And we'll also see small ones like yellow sallies that may only be size 16. But,
Or capnias.
Capnias,
They're
exactly.
even tinier, so.
But these bugs get our attention because they get the fish's attention. And if anyone's fished a salmon fly hatch, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
They are an important food source for trout. They are one of the most exciting hatches to fish as an angler. But I don't know, Max, do you have any memories of a stonefly hatch that stick out to you?
I try and fish the salmon fly hatch on the Henry's Fork every year.
Legendary.
And there's days I just go and I don't even cast. I just sit to watch. I mean, it's incredible, especially taking people too when you're like, yeah, I'm gonna find you a bug that's the size of one of your fingers, and people, it's just that no, and then you inevitably get that feeling of something in your sweatshirt. And you're like,
Gone down sunshine.
yeah, exactly. Don't swat it. Do not swat it. It's just gonna be a mess.
Yeah.
And then it naturally emerges, and you're like, oh, there it is, and
Definitely.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, these are incredible natural events, even for non-anglers. One memory that sticks out to me is years back on the Yellowstone River in Yellowstone National Park. I noticed on a beautiful sunny day, all of a sudden, the sun was not nearly as bright. And I looked up and I thought I was seeing a flock of birds fly across the river. It was millions of migrating salmon flies, which are about 2.5 inches long on the Yellowstone River. And they were so thick they almost blacked out the sun. So it's no wonder why we get excited about fishing these bugs. But I would say if you've never done it before, it takes a lot of planning. You need to expect to see other anglers out on these rivers and pick when you fish these hatches. pick them strategically.
Are you going to share your secrets with us, or?
Well, I mean,
There's secrets for a reason.
I don't know if it's a secret or not, but don't put your boat in on the Henry's Fork during the salmon fly hatch at 10 a.m. Because it's a much bigger boat hatch than a salmon fly hatch. But what people need to know is these bugs are widespread. You're going to find them on the big rivers, and you're going to find them on the tributaries to the big rivers. You're going to find these salmon flies in May, but you also cannot forget about golden stoneflies through July. And one of our favorite bugs here on the Snake River, the Classenia mutant stonefly that hatches in August and September. It's definitely an overlooked hatch.
Yeah.
And that's a way to avoid crowds, absolutely.
Well, and one thing I think that's nice about stoneflies too is,
Gotta get some saltsy.
of course, is more times than not, these hatches kind of overlap.
Yep.
You know, if we're referencing the Henry's Fork, don't be surprised to see golden stones hatching the exact same time. And you'll get refusals on those salmon flies. They'll go for the goldens for whatever reason. You know, you're talking a T-bone steak compared to, you know, tiny piece of whatever.
A single grain of rice.
There you go.
By,
That you'd think they're going to eat that big fly, but they get picky about it. And, you know, same thing where we get the Classenia, but you get that September stone stuff overlaps. We get our golden stones that overlap with the mutant stones. So, I mean, it's, especially here, it's nice because you just get that overlap. You can fish all this big stuff pretty much from, I'd say even July, like late July to even into October. The fish still know what they look like and they'll still eat the patterns. So I think that that's just really cool. That's just a cool aspect about fishing out here.
So if it wasn't obvious by now, these big bugs we're talking about tonight, it's a really, really important piece of fishing here in the Jackson Hole area, whether it be the Snake River or other regional waters.
Correct. Yep.
I dream of them. I have like FOMO, like hard FOMO, like night terrors where I'm missing big bug hatches, and then I have dreams where it's just like I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
No, absolutely.
I think we probably all like to ski in the winter, but we wake up with the sweat sometimes thinking about fishing too.
Unless you're me.
Unless you're
Where
John.
your fishing days far outnumber your ski days, even on prime powder days. I'm like, no, I'm headed to the river.
John shreds, by the way. If you ever get the opportunity to watch John ski, do it.
Yeah. Woo. If you
Brace your knees.
if you pizza when you should have, or you French fry when you should have pizzaed, you're
Gonna have a bad time.
right?
All right, what are we doing?
So, what I did is I just took my thread through that hackle, like I was saying before, tied it off. I did a couple half hitches and then a couple lip finishes just to make sure my thread doesn't fall off and unwrap everything. I just trimmed that body hackle, and all I'm going to do is add a wing now. This is MFC's Whittle Web, an EP fiber, McFly-Lon, whatever kind of synthetic Antron kind of material you want to use, totally be fine. Again, anatomically, the wing sticks past the butt of the fly. Again, not that it really matters, but I'm going to kind of make it stick past just a little bit over the top of the butt back here. And just when I tie it in, I'm going to pinch it with my left hand. Just take a couple good wraps and kind of snug it down. Huh?
What?
What'd you say, Mike?
I didn't say anything.
The mic probably picked you up. I'll just go back and rewatch it later. I'm just wrapping backwards up until where I did the hackle tied off back here. And I'll take this material, I actually cut it at an angle towards the eyes. The reason for that is when I wrap forward, I just don't have a clean cut spot where I'm going to have a big jump or a bump there now when I tie my materials in. It's going to nice taper towards the head.
I just want to interrupt and say that's the kind of detail a lot of fly tyers will overlook, and that's going to make a big difference in the final product. So
Yeah.
think about those things.
So then what we're going to grab, and I'm going to mix this up. I usually just do all black hackle for the purple one, but I'm going to put some grizzly hackles up front. Can use black hackle, grizzly. You could even probably use a dun hackle. Only thing I don't like with the purple is using a brown hackle. That's just me. That would be more for the golden stone kind of configuration here. And I'm just going to kind of gauge and see if the hackle is going to be too long or too short. And I'm actually going to end up putting 2 of these in anyways. Now these ones I'm tying in are going to stay. I'm going to keep the whole length on there. Because what I'll eventually do if I want to, if I find it doesn't want to sit right one way or the other, I'll probably just end up trimming the bottom of that hackle flat so the fly lays flat on the water. Again, that's just me being, I don't want to say anal about it, but, you know, kind of picky about how my fly sits and kind of stuff like that.
And we want the fly to sit relatively low in the water because these are somewhat clumsy insects once they get to the water in this adult stage.
Yeah.
The trout are looking for the most vulnerable one, whether it's the one that hasn't successfully dried its wings out or the one that's trying to lay eggs, which is going to be right in the film of the water.
Yeah. And that's the one thing, too, that in my tying, especially with stoneflies, they don't sit very high in the water. Like Mike was saying, when they go and dry their wings off, they're coming back to lay eggs. They sit pretty flush on the water. So a lot of your lower riding patterns, although they can be a pain to see, for me, anyways, in my fishing, I've done a lot better with stuff that sits a lot more flush to the water. Just because if you look at pictures of them, physically see them in the water, again, they're not like on the surface with their legs. Their whole entire body's in the water. And I think the fish absolutely know that and acknowledge that, okay, fly pattern's definitely sitting up kind of high, all funky, as compared to this one that's floating over my head. So you may not eat it, but again, that could just be us as anglers getting a little finicky about this. But so all I'm going to do here is I'm just putting some more dubbing on. I'm going to take, I don't know, maybe 3 wraps of that hackle each through this kind of, I don't know, I'd say third portions of the fly. And then we're just going to eventually finish the head off with more ice dubbing. Nothing too crazy there. But I want to make sure I give myself enough room up front here that I'm not crowding even behind those mono eyes. Because I do want there to be a distinct separation between the hackle and that head. And one thing to take into consideration, again, just me being a finicky fly tyer, most of your golden stoneflies kind of have a big fat head. If you're tying this pattern to look like a salmon fly, they have a very tiny head, so they kind of taper more. Your golden stones kind of are like a square head on them, which is why if I tie it for a golden stone, I'm not too worried about making a nice fine tapered head on it. I'd rather have it kind of be fat. But
Can I ask a question about fly design on this one?
Absolutely.
This may be one of the only stonefly patterns I've ever seen
Without rubber legs?
without rubber legs. Damn. And I know if Howard Cole were here tonight,
He said he's not going to catch fish.
I know if Howard Cole were here tonight, rubber legs would be a sensitive subject we discussed. So given that stoneflies do have legs, and often the patterns do, why have you chosen with this fly to leave them off?
I think, especially when you fish a river that gets pressured a lot and the fish see the same kinds of patterns over and over again, stuff that has big rubber legs, I don't think it hurts to have something like this that's a little bit more sparse in your box. And you may be looking at this fly and you tie flies and going like, well, this isn't very sparse. Like you brought up, patterns like this usually have at least 2 rubber legs on each side.
Yes.
If you want to be anatomically correct, 3 on each side.
Oh,
But
I love it.
But later in the season especially, again, as these fish see the same chubby Chernobyl ants, water walkers, whatever it may be floating overhead, yes, they'll still eat it, but you might have more of those bigger fish are kind of like, definitely have seen this before, and I know last time I did, I got yanked out of the water, so I don't think it's going to hurt you to carry stuff like this in your box at all.
I think what it might actually imitate is the chubby Chernobyl that has had all of its rubber legs bitten off by those 6-inch fish on the snake.
Especially like just after runoff.
So the big fish are like, that's the one.
Yeah, there you go. All those little dudes pecked at it first. Now it's my turn.
I think you guys mentioned this earlier, but what's the usual prime time for the salmon fly hatch?
That varies depending on where you want to go. If we're talking Henry's Fork, what would you say? May?
It's going to be generally starting the third week of May, and it also is going to depend where you're fishing on that river. But yeah, we could say around the third week of May on the Henry's Fork.
You go in the Yellowstone. I know you and Ken especially have fished in Yellowstone more than I have, so I know you guys would.
That's
Shed
going to
more light
be
on
more
that.
a mid to late July, depending on where in the Yellowstone watershed you are. And I'm talking in the park. If you're downstream towards Montana, it's more like 4th of July, wouldn't you say, Ken? And then, I mean, it is really overlooked, but we do have salmon flies in the Jackson Hole area. One reason anglers don't think about it is because it doesn't happen on the main stem of the Snake River where most people are floating.
Yep.
But our tributaries do have salmon flies, and that's going to vary on the elevation of the tributary from the third week of June to the middle of July.
Yeah. And if you wanted to venture all the way to the Deschutes, that's another very famous river for salmon fly hatch. You know, you're talking.
I don't even know what state that's in.
I think,
From the beer. That's the brew.
I think it's
Oregon.
Bend, Oregon.
Oregon. There you go.
Next to that one.
That one, I believe, is, I'd say, almost end of April.
Don't ask me.
Somewhere along those lines. So, it's again, it kind of, as the season progresses, you know, again, April to May to June to July, kind of across the Rocky Mountain West, even just farther west, like Oregon, stuff like that.
And the reason that is, it's the same as any other hatch that us trout nerds in the West focus on. It's all going to be tied to elevation, water temperatures. So these hatches happen when they happen because of the temperatures in the river, stimulating those larvae to begin moving away from the water towards the banks to become adults and hatch.
Make more babies.
Make more babies so we have happy, hungry trout that eat the babies.
There we go.
Cannibals.
So what's the go-to Roadhouse beer for summertime fishing?
Well, one of them
Loaded question.
would be our trout whistle, which is our summer pale, a beer that I drink a ton of in the summer. Really nice, light, good hop flavor. Seltzy is going to be a new summer thing in the boat. I'm super pumped for some hard seltzer.
What are those flavors?
We have a ginger lime, huckleberry, and lingonberry, and then lychee cucumber. They're going to be refreshing, crushable. Like, I drink a lot of seltzer, so I was pretty excited to develop a seltzer for Roadhouse. So I'll have plenty of trout whistle, plenty of seltzer. Another beer I didn't bring, Highwayman, our Pilsner. I drink a lot of yellow beer, I drink a lot of Coors Banquet. So I wanted to develop a beer for Roadhouse that was Coors Banquet-esque. Coors Banquet, not Coors Light. Banquet.
Big difference.
Big difference. Big difference. Trout whistle, seltzy, those would be my go-tos in the summer. And I've been tying a lot of flies right now, drinking some seltzy, because I still, you know.
Gotta have some motor skills.
Exactly. You gotta have a little bit, you know, like I really get in the groove, and one or two seltzers isn't gonna hit me quite like a Wilson. You know, is gonna do it.
Where you wake up next morning, you look at your flies and like, I did that.
Well, you can literally see the progression over the course of the tying session.
The first one comes out perfect.
And then the next thing you know, your stonefly pattern has no legs.
Up true.
For those people who don't live in the Jackson area, how far does Roadhouse reach out, distribute?
Yeah, Roadhouse, we're in the Intermountain West primarily. So statewide in Wyoming. If you're in Wyoming, you can find our beer throughout the state. Most of Idaho will see it. Utah, the Wasatch Front, and Salt Lake area, Park City, all Little Cottonwood, Big Cottonwood. Colorado is a huge market for us. So if you're in Fort Collins, Denver, down to Colorado Springs, that whole I-25 corridor is pretty huge. We are opening up a couple new markets. Just test the waters a little bit. I won't quite say where we're looking at, just as we're. It's not scoop-ish yet, but we just know if you're waiting, Roadhouse might be coming to a liquor store near you, which is really exciting. We have dabbled. If you're not in the Intermountain West, we do dabble in some beer club orders, so you can pick up Roadhouse through some mail order subscriptions and online orders as well. So, yeah, that's where you'll find us. It's just keeping us busy. Southern Montana as well. So, Intermountain West. If I can drag a drift boat and fish and sell some beer, you can find Roadhouse beer. It's like a very key component.
It's a good sales pitch.
There we go. Alrighty, so as I whispered to Mike while Max was talking about beers, Howard likes to use his hands to whip finish. I'm going to do it a little extra fancier than he does. He does it with two hands. I don't know how he does it.
Do you use the fly?
Yes, I'm not with the fly, by the way, so I'm whip finishing it.
This is the grand finale.
Anyway,
He's gonna whip finish better than Howard Cole.
yeah, exactly. Hey, that's the one thing I can do a little bit better, okay? Yeah, straight from the horse's mouth. So again, I didn't put too tapered of a head on there. There is obviously going to be some taper, but I made it kind of a fat head again for our golden stoneflies here. But yeah, I'm going to whip finish by hand. Well, Howard,
Cow.
I know. Well, Howard does it some goofy
That is
way
like Bruce Lee stuff.
with two hands.
Jedi Master.
Exactly. But yep, so just gonna cut our thread off. I think that's the fastest I've ever tied a fly on this. Last time it took me like 45 minutes to get it like halfway through, and I was like, oh crap.
Bravo.
But so that's gonna be our finished fly.
No adhesive of any kind.
Nope. Usually I find that if you do a 3-turn whip finish and another one on top, usually holds just fine. I haven't ever had an issue with thread breaking near the head. Some flies that I know will last me a long time, I might just give them a little more life.
Sure.
But for this guy where, I'm going to be fishing it during the summertime, it's going to probably maybe even end up in a log because, I'm going to cast into a log trying to get to that spot where I know there's a fish under there. I'm not really too concerned about it.
Sure.
You're more than welcome to, but the finished fly, I don't know the name that Ken Burkholder has for it, but I think it's a neat pattern. Even if I get really, really bored, I'll take a Sharpie and I'll bar the antennas and tail. But that's just me being a nerd and being finicky with all this. But yeah.
How are you?
We got another question
perfect.
From Robert. When you float, what is your logistics for trailer from launch to retrieval?
What do we define as logistics?
Oh, you just pull the trailer behind the boat, and then that way it's there when you're. I'm kidding.
I was just saying, like, what you mean it doesn't circle back around to where you put the boat in?
The river is a circle.
You'd be surprised
It's a lazy
how
river.
many people ask the river guides in the national park how they get back to their car.
Oh, trust me.
Snow,
What was that?
maybe like specifically in the winter when we're dealing with snow, like rafts are
Yeah,
conducive.
I mean,
Absolutely, especially here.
before ramps are plowed, yeah, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature as far as backing a trailer goes. So a lot of people have rafts that they can pull to the water.
Yep.
Once we have clear boat ramps and you can get a drift boat and trailer down, personally, I like to drop my boat at the put-in and get my trailer to the takeout before I go, because then it's one less thing I have to do in the dark.
Yeah.
Because I
exactly.
fish until the dark. Because my wife Katie can never call it quits. But I mean, there are services that will shuttle your car for you if you're not going to be going with friends, and so you'll leave their keys in the car,
Somewhere. Yep.
pay them money, tell them where the money is, so your car gets moved, and then you're good. And otherwise, yeah, have a buddy bring a car, get your trailer to the takeout, drive back to your put-in, and have a good day. And I guess drink Roadhouse beer too while you're at it.
Not while driving.
Not while driving.
I've done some pretty wild. I've had to replace a lot of winches on my trailers. if we're talking like specifically winter, where I've got like old static climbing ropes, at a couple 100 yards down the way.
Hey.
Winch it up, maybe pull it a little bit,
Well,
tie a new bight in the rope, winch it back up. It's a labor of love.
There you
depends
go.
how bad you want it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the kind of person who always for my drift boat trailer, I always crank my strap all the way up. I winch it all the way in. I'm not one of the kind of people who leaves it clipped to my trailer as well. If we're really going like nitty-gritty logistics.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I've like had some really great life out of my strap.
Yeah.
I know people argue the UV games are really destroying the strap.
Don't do it.
I don't know. I'm in no rush. I got nothing to prove to anyone, so I just crank it up and let it roll.
But yeah, no, it's
Do we have more
Are you
questions?
floating in drift boat or raft on Saturday?
Drift boat. Yeah.
So what's plowed over in Idaho right now?
I'm actually going to take advantage of a very dear friend's guiding life and access to some ramps in Jackson. So we're pretty pumped. We're going to do
Some private access?
yeah, which I think if you know the snake well enough, it could probably like narrow it down. But I don't want to like really dive in case we're going to get people in trouble.
These are the kind of secrets we cannot give out.
Yeah.
These cannot be divulged tonight.
Yeah. But yeah, it's hard boat time for me. My feet have been cold enough all winter.
yeah.
So I'm ready to stand in a hard boat and
Good.
and go for it.
I've stood in leaky waders enough this winter, going through 2 pairs in a matter of a month. So
John.
I'm ready to float myself.
John has torn how many pairs of waders and broken how many rods already this year?
Also, 1 rod down. Of course, one of the most expensive. The most expensive pair of waders I had got a tear in it the 5th time wearing them, and then
Mention the manufacturer.
the backups I got as a Christmas present. The right boot foot decided to have a thin spot in the neoprene booty.
We won't mention the
Fished
manufacturer
the
either.
Madison and walked out with a sopping wet foot. So.
The slow leak. Just that slow
I mean, it was
leak.
No, it was enough to where it was warm outside, so I wasn't like uncomfortable. But it was driving back home barefoot.
I just hate that moment of being in waders and it's like,
Yeah,
am I cold or is that? I think that's water.
yeah.
Thinking bigger outside of our upcoming maniacal float trips on the Snake we have this week. Do you guys have any road trip or travel plans coming up for fishing pursuits?
Not at the moment, nothing planned. Probably maybe try and do something kind of last moment, maybe in Montana somewhere. Go explore a little bit. Would be nice. Otherwise,
Don't really have an off season anymore.
yeah. I don't have a month where you're like, okay, there's like nobody here. Let's go do something. It's like, no, there's people here 11 and a half months out of the year. So, but
Max, you heading anywhere?
I am. I'm heading up to Helena. Pick up my drift boat. It's getting worked on. So I'm really pumped. I don't know if we'd say, folks at Adipose are hooking me up with
Sweet.
working on my original South Fork skiff.
nice.
Super psyched. So I'm going to fly my dad to hopefully Helena or Bozeman. We're going to fish our way home, which will be a
Nice.
lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe a little trip to Casper. I've been tempting some things, but need to get out and fish.
Awesome.
I got the itch.
There you go.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike? You're asking all these very good questions, and you're just
No,
sitting there listening to our answers.
I mean, someone's got to, keep things moving along.
You got to keep the conversation rolling. Like I said, I'm surprised I finished this fast.
So I'm going to spend some time down around Dutch John, Utah, fish the green below Flaming Gorge. It's just a cool fishery, perhaps the most fish per river mile in this well, definitely the most fish per river mile in this region.
Yeah.
But great hatches coming up in April down there. You'll have midges. Looking forward to Betas by that point. And then I'm also going to spend some time and travel to Montana. Maybe see Ken, who has been anonymous all night. Hi, Ken. Hello. Maybe see Ken up in Montana. And that's just kind of to be determined, whether it's the Madison, hit the Yellowstone and Paradise Valley, swing some flies on the Missouri, something I've never done, which is hard to believe. But, yeah, take the two-hander out.
There you go.
We salute you, Howard Cole, wherever you are. Two-handed, spay weenie, whatever you want to be called.
He's in Washington right now doing.
Well, he could be on his way. I mean, we don't know where he is.
He left on Monday. I sure hope he's there by now.
It's only Tuesday.
He's in a bar.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
that's true.
He's in the middle of nowhere, Idaho.
All All right, got a couple more questions.
Yeah.
When fishing the salmon fly hatch, do you use a dropper rig or usually just the dry?
Streamers.
I know.
I'm only half joking about that. Just so you know.
I know your
Anyway.
response.
Anyway.
Just the dry fly.
No, I mean, for any of you listening, throw a streamer during the salmon fly hatch just for fun. For me, I'm going to throw a dry fly. I'm going to throw a low riding dry fly. And it depends where I'm fishing, because there are some fisheries like the Henry's Fork where you're going to hit the bank with that fly where you know there's fish. And there's other places like, say, the Yellowstone where I'm throwing that dry fly to a fish I've seen absolutely annihilate
Yeah.
an actual salmon fly. So I'm targeting fish. But yeah, I'm trying to fish that dry fly. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I'm there for.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh?
I usually mash up my big dry, clip some wings, like kind of mangle it a little bit, and then I usually throw a golden stone dropper under them all.
Yeah.
Like to mix it up. What's off
Yeah.
the menu?
But it's what, I mean, it might be the actual
Exactly.
nymph that they're seeing predominantly at
Totally.
that point. So it makes
So,
sense.
I go into a restaurant and I order the special, so I like to think the trout want to order the special too, and so a little bit something different, see what's happening.
There
But
you go.
I always throw a little dropper off of my
Yeah.
dry. Usually by like 12:30 or 1, like right after lunch, I'm clipping that because all I want to do is fish single foam.
Yeah.
And like hunt banks hard, hit
Yeah.
that log
Yeah.
that I know I'm going to lose the 10th fly of the season on already.
It's also where the biggest fish is.
Definitely.
The bad MLFO, as Howard said on live
We're gonna
television.
say mofo. Yeah, it's something I definitely will throw a dropper. Depends on what I see going on. I may throw a golden stone, might throw really like big Pat's rubber legs to imitate a salmon fly, or you might see caddis hatching at the same time
Totally.
during a salmon fly hatch where I'm throwing a caddis dropper off
You
of
might
there.
see PMDs out.
Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't hurt to really vary it up. It wouldn't surprise me, and I've had it happen before where not touching the salmon fly, eating just a dropper. A caddis dropper, PMD, golden stone, whatever it is.
And dismiss just dropper. If you're going to throw a tandem fly rig, also think about throwing a tandem dry fly rig.
Yeah.
For the reason John
Yes.
just said, because there are often so many other bugs hatching during that salmon fly
Yeah.
hatch. You might see fish rising, but it's not that explosive stonefly eat.
No.
It's the sip of an emerging caddisfly or mayfly
Yeah,
or something like that.
exactly.
So keep that in your arsenal too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, another one for you. Where is the most productive fishing near the end of July, early August, for someone maybe coming to visit?
Yeah, absolutely.
You got a lot of options.
I was gonna say there's a lot of different water here. Whether you want to go fish the Big Snake, any of its tributaries.
Yellowstone
go
National
explore.
Park, every water is open by
Yeah.
that point.
Yep.
If you're talking, once we hit August 1st, our spring creeks here in the area are open as
Yeah.
well. So by that point in the year, pretty much everything is open.
Yep.
I know we've talked a little bit about the Henry's Fork. Depending where you're talking on the Henry's Fork by that point, you may be looking at the end of the season,
Yeah.
at least until fall rolls back around.
Yeah.
If you're talking about the Firehole or the Madison, it's not going to be prime time for that. But like Max said, if you're here in Jackson, it's prime time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all look forward to post runoff. Because now we only options we have is to drive an hour plus to go fish clean water. But
Well,
we like
because
the snake.
because we get to throw this. I mean,
Yeah,
if you're here late July, beginning of August,
yeah,
you don't have to worry about tying on a fly. You can't see without glasses. We throw big bugs.
Yeah.
So that's the joy of it.
Early
Yeah.
August, especially as like Flat Creek begins to open and some of those other spring creeks, I love going up floating in the park early in the morning.
yep,
I like to hit the Grove on my way home, and there's nothing like walking around the refuge as the sun comes down and fishing.
absolutely.
I try and reserve those like 14 or 16 hours of the day to fish
Everything.
all day. Like,
Yeah.
I live
Day.
for the month of August, to fish.
Our
All
summers are short.
Yeah, August and September.
What else we got, Claire?
Anything else good? No, let's see what else is on our fancy little to-do list here.
We hit a lot of good stuff on
Yeah,
here.
I know. Jeez.
Any big happenings at Roadhouse coming up?
I was gonna say.
Everyone should be aware of? New beers?
Try whistles coming up. Check out Mountain Jam Volume 6 right now, which will be out for a little bit longer. Seltzy is going to be a big thing, so look out for Seltzy. I highly recommend, if you're not a hard seltzer drinker, give ours a shot. I think you'll be thoroughly impressed. It's a lot different. It's dry. It's not sweet. We hit a lot of the great buzzwords. It's vegan, gluten-free, 90 calories, zero sugar. Woo-hoo-hoo! Super guns. So check those out. Pona Life should be showing up too. That's a great, for me, it's like, wow, spring's happening. Check out the Pub and Eatery. We're doing a lot of fun things up there. Menu should be shifting here come summer. Beer garden out in the Parklet, which is awesome. One of the better, I'd say, components of COVID is that we've now got this beautiful outdoor space right on the town square, and then certainly our deck is going to be killer come summer. We got some really good summer beer coming up.
Volume 7 in the works?
Volume 7 is on the works. It's in the very infant stages. So if you come to the Pub and Eatery, we always call the test batches of Mountain Jam sound check. So if you see sound check, we're cooking up something. We're scheming something. So.
I literally just figured that out.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. That is
Check.
Yeah, no, it's the warm up. Yeah, that's perfect. Wow. It's been how many years you've been doing this now?
Yeah, a couple for sure. Like 3, I guess now, and that with that whole game. But yeah, it's great. And tonight's ramen night, which is awesome.
Oh,
You
yeah.
brought ramen, right?
Ramen night's been killer, and I don't want to
had a whole
totally
two
take
enchiladas.
away from our sous chef Jake, who just crushes our ramen night. But he does 3 ramens. They're very traditional. He geeks out over the broths as hard as I geek out over the beer, which is super fun. But he's doing a shrimp, he's doing a pork, so like a true pork belly, and then a vegetarian, or I think it's actually vegan, and it's a mushroom ramen. They're fantastic. We've been
0
donating
carbs,
a bunch of
gluten-free, 90
the
calories.
proceeds of those ramens to local nonprofits. We most recently donated a bunch of money to Teton County Search and Rescue. The men and women of TSAR stayed very busy this winter, and we wanted to give them a little bit of love and let them know we were thinking of them. So check Ramen Nights on Tuesdays. That's not going anywhere, so check that out. That is
Well,
10 out of
speaking
10.
of the snowpack and search and rescue, how is runoff looking right now for the spring?
It's still really hard to say. So for those of you who have been following along or who live here, January was pretty barren. Outlook was bleak. And then February happened, and for those of us who enjoyed skiing, had some incredible days. February pushed us to about 100% median snowpack, which is where you always want to be as a baseline. And then March happened, and it basically hasn't snowed much since. We've gotten some high elevation accumulation the last few days, but we have dipped back under 100%. So we're still close enough to average where it's going to look like a normal year, but it still depends on how much more snow we get and when things really warm up. I wouldn't make a prediction one way or another, but if it stopped snowing today, we'd be in for a fairly early runoff most likely and a fairly early start to fishing season. And by early, when we're talking in Jackson Hole, you might be able to fish the snake on 4th of July.
Maybe.
But don't take my word on it, and don't call JD when you're pissed off that the water's not clear.
Yeah, that you're not fishing by 4th of July.
But yeah, I mean, it's not an extreme one way or another. So we're hoping for, more water, happy trout, and a good fishing season. But based off the fish we've been seeing in the last few weeks, they're fat, they're happy, and they're ready to come eat some bugs when the bugs show up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll end with one more question. For those just tuning in, Chris has a question. How big is too big for Chernobyl, circus peanuts, etc.?
I mean, I see a WorldCast, they have size 2 Chernobyl. Circus peanuts, so they're you legitimately have half a hot dog on a hook.
Okay.
That's kind of big.
So part of it with that bug size is going to be trying to keep it within the realm of looking like a natural bug you're trying to imitate. Pardon me. The Roadhouse beers work. So it depends on which stonefly you're talking, but for us around here, that's really size 8 is probably
Yeah.
the middle of the road for what most of our stoneflies look like. The other part of that equation is you kind of want to match it to the fish. So you might see a size 4 stonefly around here, but if you're floating the snake, you probably don't want to fish a size 4
No.
stonefly because the smaller fly is going to be more appropriate to this fishery. And that's not because the fish are all small. It's just there are small fish out there that we want to make sure we're not injuring. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with acknowledging that.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, like you said, on the side of flies or sizing, everybody thinks foam flies. We want to fish these ginormous foam flies, tons of rubber legs,
I get sick of it.
ginormous sheets of foam, bunch of splash to them. Saying this is flashy, but yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'll feel comfortable fishing a size 6 circus peanut, but I know a size 14 circus peanut's just gonna do just as well. That just comes with the day. You know, there's gonna be days where it's that size 10. There's gonna be days where you could even bump it up to a size 4 if you really wanted to, and they're gonna eat it. But to appropriately size it to our bugs here, probably like an 8 or a 10. You know, maybe a 6, depending on what's hatching. Those are the kind of the confidence sizes I have for any pattern across the board, whether it be a water walker, Chernobyl ant, regular chubby Chernobyl, stuff like that is kind of the sweet spot, I think. If you're going to come out here, never fished it before, looking for flies, I think your box will be pretty set with stuff along that size range.
Yeah.
Yeah, but half of a hot dog on the South Fork.
Is it the half of the hot dog work?
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially with a worm dropped off of it.
That's like the size of your index finger. Jeez.
All right.
At least we had fun.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We had some fun tonight. Great questions. Good looking bug. Great beer and Celsius.
Good looking tire.
What was that?
Thank you, Mike. I'm sure the mic did pick that up. Can you turn it up so we make sure we catch that though?
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Next week we got Scott Sanchez. He's back. What's he tying up?
I think a double bunny variant or something.
Streamer, right?
Yeah.
For us who don't.
Yeah, for all you guys that wanted to do a big streamer not podcast, but
Yeah.
a video, there's Scott's tying one. So
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be our last one for a little while. We're going to take a little break, April, early May, and then get things rolling again. So again, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
We're having fun. Check out some Roadhouse beer. Thanks, Max, for joining in.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank
Thanks
you.
much.
Awesome. But yeah, no. We clear?